Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to present to you Mr. Scott Solomon. Scott, thank you for joining. How's it going?
Good. It's my pleasure to be here.
For sure, man. So I gotta start from the top. When did you knew that you wanted to write sports for a living?
Probably when I was in high school and I wrote about the Yankees Dodgers World Series for my high school newspaper. Obviously, didn't cover it. I wasn't credentialed, but I wrote about it off of television and I really enjoyed it. And I went on to join the newspaper for a couple of years and then got my degree in journalism.
Are we talking about the 1981 World Series? That's the one that you covered?
Yes, it was.
Okay, nice indeed. Nice. So I saw that you attended University of Miami. How was the culture like there? Because I know you studied journalism there. So how was that like back then?
It was great. I mean, it was national championship city for us. We won three championships while I was there. Yeah. And we went through a coaching change when Jimmy left. Dennis Erickson came in my senior year and took over. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, the U games at the Orange Bowl, there's nothing like it. I mean, you can't duplicate what it was like to go to the Orange Bowl at Hard Rock Stadium. It just doesn't happen. The magic it was magic. It was a magical place.
I certainly believe that. I mean, I'm a Miami Hurricane fan for both college baseball and football. And I always recommend people, especially for Miami Hurricane fans, that if you haven't seen 30 for 30 parts one and two of the U, you have to see it, especially part one, because it covers the early beginnings of Miami Hurricanes. And those Hurricanes in the 80s and early 90s, those were incredible teams, with the Jimmy Johnsons, the Scott Harrison, you have Michael Irvins. Um, it was just so many great players from that era. And this was before the Miami Heat, before the Miami Marlins. It was Miami Hurricanes. So you were there at the right time, to cover those teams. And the interesting part is that after that, you study law. Is that correct? You study law after
I went
University
to
of Miami?
law school at St. Thomas University. I practiced law for about 15 years and just got burnt out of it. And
Why law? If you don't, sorry to interrupt, but why law?
it was a field where I could use my persuasion, my methods of persuasion, and my writing to help people. And I felt that at the time that was in my best interest, and I enjoyed it for the first couple of years. But after that, it just takes a toll on you, and I was tired of dealing with what I would deem minuscule problems when there are bigger problems out there that you can deal with.
Oh. So yeah, when I looked this up of your resume, and I said, well, interesting, as Scott studied law, but at least you gain experience out of that. Whether you would have gone further or not, at least you got to learn something from that, and you gained something out of that. So
I
everything that
wouldn't
we do in life is a learning experience,
I
whether
wouldn't
we
trade
stick to it or
going to
not.
law school. I wouldn't trade going to law school for anything. I mean, it made me a better journalist. It taught me how to write concise. It taught me how to ask a question properly and how, to get the answer that you're looking for. Sometimes I feel like when I'm talking to people I'm interviewing, I'm cross-examining them to get the answers that I'm looking for that they might not necessarily want to give me.
Are you a person that likes to watch movies or shows? And if so, what are some of those movies and shows that falls into the topic of law that interests you? What are some of those movies and shows that you feel that is close, at least enough to how law is like?
The only one that I found that was close was years ago. There was a show called LA Law
I'm
that
I'm currently watching that show.
yeah that was
Nice.
that was close to the business side of law. Um, but I don't find that any of these shows that are on today are remotely close to what it's like practicing law. I mean, until you pick a jury and you go before a jury, you really don't know what it's like. But it certainly isn't the way they draw it up on television.
It's so interesting you mentioned LA Law because that show for quite a several years now, it was there, but it was one of those shows where I'm like, I don't know when I'll watch it. So then coming into this year, I said to myself, let me see what shows, classical shows that I haven't seen yet that's on streaming service. So I got back on Hulu and I see that LA Law is there. Once I started watching the first episode, I just couldn't stop. Is every day I'm watching one episode and it's just so good. So the fact that you mention it, salute you, man. Great show so far.
It was the best legal show I've ever seen. It got me excited and pumped to go to law school.
Nice, nice. Um, so back to journalism. You worked at the Orlando Sentinel as a sports correspondent, and you were there basically the beginning when Miami Heat got started. So how was that like?
Well, I covered the Heat in its infancy for USA Today. The Orlando Sentinel, I covered the Dolphins and the Hurricanes. Um, I remember covering the Heat when they had their 0-19, I believe it was, start before they won a game, before they beat the Clippers in LA. And I covered home games, and it was different because I really didn't grow up a basketball fan, because we didn't have a team, and the Dolphins were king and the Hurricanes were right up there, so that pretty much carried us through the year. But when the Heat came along, it provided another opportunity for me to learn another sport and uh, produce quality content, which for somebody in college, I think I did a good job.
Now that we're in 2025, what are the Miami? What's I would say what Miami team do you root for the most now? Because back then you were limited. There was no Miami Heat. There was no none of that. So now that we're in 2025, has your mind changed over the years, or do you still feel the same as before in terms of which Miami team you root for the most?
I would say the Dolphins and the Hurricanes are probably my two top sports franchises that I embrace the most. Um, I went to the University of Miami, and it was good to me, and it was good to my family, and I enjoyed it. I had a good time there, so they have a special place in my heart. The Miami Dolphins I've been following since I was a little kid, and back from the Bob Greasy days. I started following the team right after the perfect season, when I was maybe 5 or 6, and they disappoint me every year, but I still get excited about it.
What's the toughest moment that you've gone through in your journalistic career so far?
The toughest moment would probably be when I was working in the Miami Herald building, and we got locked in the building because of the Miami riots during 1988 or 89, when we had the Super Bowl down here. We had the riots a couple weeks before that, and they locked the building down and wouldn't let us out.
Hmm.
That was probably the moment that I remember the most growing up in journalism. I mean, if you want a sports moment, um, that I remember the most, would probably be Ray Allen hitting that three against San Antonio in Game 6 to tie it up. And I remember Mike Inglis on the call, and it was just a great call. I mean, it was so emotional. It was uh, everything that you look for in a radio broadcast.
What's been your greatest achievement of your career so far?
Well, I'm going out to New Orleans next week to cover the Super Bowl.
Ah, congratulations, man.
Thank you. Uh, that's probably the crowning achievement of my career. Um, I've covered NFL combines. I've covered uh, a Super Bowl back in '89 when it was with the Cincinnati Bengals and San Francisco 49ers when it was in Miami. Uh, but I'm not going to be playing a role like I did in that game. That game, I was pretty much just a quote runner. But now I am full fledged covering Super Bowl week, and I'm looking forward to it.
Congratulations, Scott, once again. Well deserved, man. You've been
Thank
doing
you.
this for so many years, so this is a huge victory for your career.
It feels good. I'm all set to go, and I just hope it doesn't snow.
Well, after this, you can only continue to climb higher. Doesn't matter where you at in your career, you just gotta continue to climb higher after that. So, but keep
Yeah,
it going, man, and super happy to hear that.
thank you. The way I look at it is you just have to look at every story as its own mountain. And once you climb that mountain, you move on to the next one. And it's worked well for me in my career, and it's taken me places. And some people like me, some people don't like me. I can't, no one likes everybody out there, but I just hope more people like me than don't.
You win some, you lose some. That's how it goes. Not you can't please everyone. So you just gotta
That's
roll with the punches and um always carry a positive mindset no matter where you go. There's
that's
always at the
right.
light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
So we're gonna play a little game, a little simple game here, Scott. So basically, I'll ask you something simple. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Favorite breakfast meal?
Favorite breakfast meal? I'm gonna say protein shake.
Which Marlins team had a better story, the '97 or 2003?
The '97 team for sure, because it was an early expansion team. They were put together specifically to win a world championship. Jim Leyland put a great team on the field, and it was just very exciting. Winning in Game 7 in the bottom of the 11th inning, I believe. I remember I was there, and I had the Cleveland Indians wives sitting behind me, and they thought they were going to win. And then we tied it up in the ninth, and the rest was history.
I'm gonna stick with that one. I don't know if this is fair or not fair, but still, I'm curious to hear what you have to say. From both teams, '97 and 2003, who had the better postseason run? I should say, Levon Hernandez in '97 or Josh Beckett 2003.
Well, Beckett pitched a gem in New York, so you really can't take anything away from him. But Levon Hernandez had a great run through the NL Championship Series and the World Series that nobody can ever take away from him. I'm gonna have probably have to say Levon. I think Levon was clearly the MVP of the playoffs.
Also, there's another part that people forget to mention about Beckett. He pitched Game 5 of the elimination game against the Cubs and then LCS to extend it to Chicago. And then on 2 days rest, he shut out the Cubs in Game 7. But I understand Levon Hernandez, he was the LCS MVP and the World Series MVP. he was just dominant in that postseason run, and he was a rookie too. So, but but fair enough. Um, what are your name me your top three travel destinations that you want to go to that you haven't been to yet?
Oh boy. I'm really not much of a world traveler. I have no desire to leave the country. I'd like to go to Israel once, and experience that. I love going to New York. I love going to Las Vegas. Those are probably my two favorite cities. Chicago, it's a great town. Um, I'm very comfortable here in Fort Lauderdale. I don't need to go anywhere.
I don't blame you, Sunshine State. And Miami's my favorite city. I've been there 4 times, so yeah, it's one of the, as you can see, that's how we met. Writing for Inside the Heat for Sports Illustrated, I always wanted to write for Miami Heat. So the fact that I got to write there and I met you there, that was a good experience. But Miami's my favorite city. It's always a joy every time I go over there. And
That's great.
there might be a chance I might be going this year. I haven't been there since 2019, so let's see. God willing, hopefully, I get to make that happen.
That'd be great.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, I'm trying to think one more. Favorite dessert.
Favorite dessert, without a doubt, is New York cheesecake.
Ah, nice, nice, nice.
Either that or creme brulee, but it's got to be made the right way.
As a matter of fact, I got one more for you now that I remember.
Go ahead.
Which public figure, doesn't have to be sports, it could be anyone. I'm gonna be fair because it's hard to narrow down just one. Name me your name me at least five public figures, dead or alive, that you would love to sit down and just have a chat with.
Oh boy. Um, I'd like to sit down with the Pope. Um, I'd like to sit down with Bill Clinton. Um, I'd like to sit down with Stormy Daniels and find out what really happened in New York with Donald Trump. I'd like to. I miss my friend Ron Frazier, the baseball coach from the University of Miami. We used to have good chats and good talks when I was in college and in law school. He was like a mentor to me. Uh, he let me coach first base once, and that was a lot of fun. I would love to be able to have the chance to talk to the Wiz again. That would be cool. And probably Babe Ruth.
Great, great choice. That's five right there. Well, two more questions for you, but that's it. We're done with the game. So I got two questions for you. Number one, as you can see, what's happening with Jimmy Butler in the Miami Heat. Do you feel that this story, this drama between both sides of the parties being dragged for too long? Or
I think Jimmy Butler's outstayed his welcome. I mean, he does this wherever he goes. You know, wherever Jimmy doesn't get his way, he makes a ruckus. I think it's just time for them to part ways and make sure the Heat get something of value to compensate them for the loss of Butler.
Jimmy Butler is one of my top five favorite players in the game. When I narrow down favorite players, they have to be good on both ends of the floor. And he does that. But now we're going back to the same story of Jimmy Butler when he was in Minnesota, where he was constantly in the news. about him having difficulty playing with his teammates and all this stuff with the front office. So we're back to that again. And it's tough when you hear his name circling, especially with the Miami Heat, because everything was going great until um in my opinion, I felt when after Pat Riley made that comment, after they got eliminated by the Celtics, that was the beginning of everything that you see happening right now.
That was the beginning of the end.
That was the beginning of the end. So it is hard when you hear, because I love Pat Riley, everything that he stands for. I love Jimmy Butler, everything he had to endure to become the player that he is. But the pettiness, the lack of professionalism, is just so many things that's happening right now that I
Well,
wish it does, that I wish it would have never happened. But you can't fix it. That's it. It's over. Both sides need to move on.
it's hard feeling sorry for a guy that makes $50 million a year playing basketball, and I'll never be able to understand or comprehend that. Um, what he's done. I mean, if it wasn't for basketball, he wouldn't be making $50 million. He can make all the coffee he wants. He's not going to make that kind of money, making coffee and being a barista. So I think he's just a prima donna, and I think he's got to go. He's a cancer to the locker room.
It's very unfortunate that it's happening, but they got to move on. Bradley Beal, I mean, in my opinion, he doesn't move the needle for the Miami Heat, but at this point, you have to get something. Have to get something. You have to obviously, because this is a major distraction, and I always feel bad for the players that they constantly have to deal with the questions from the media about what is Jimmy Butler doing, what is this, what is that, and you could tell by the body language is uncomfortable. But so far, they're handling, especially Bam Adebayo, he's been handling well in terms of answering the questions when it comes to their teammate. But this is basketball. This is sports. It's going to happen. When there's distractions, you can't avoid media. That you have to answer the questions. It's a matter of how you're going to answer. You got to, because you don't want to put the organization in a precarious situation. But yeah, and now he's suspended for 2 more games. So at least that gives Miami front office a little bit more time to see what could they get for Jimmy Butler, and they don't necessarily have to obligate to trade him wherever he wants to go. I feel like the
No,
ball. I feel like they have the upper hand in that regard.
they have no obligation to trade him where he wants to go, and I don't think they really care, just as long as they can unload him for something of value. And the question is what can they take on contract wise? Uh, I realize 50 million is going to come off your books, but that's pretty much what everybody's making of that stature. So it's a question of what you can take on and still stay under the second apron. Um, it'll be interesting. We'll see.
Right, Scott. Last but not least, what advice would you have for any aspiring sports journalists out there?
Keep plugging away and keep writing, and don't let opinions get in your way. Um, not everybody has to love the way you write. There are going to be some editors that aren't going to like you, but there are some editors that are going to like you. And for the ones that do like you give them the best work you can possibly give them.
Amen to that. Scott, thank you so much for being part of the show, the Respect the Praise Show. This podcast is dedicating to anyone that is doing amazing work, that they just don't quit. They just continue to put in the work and continue to get better. So, Scott, much respect. And I salute to all the years that you've been putting into sports journalism, and you're still pushing and still climbing. So, best of luck to you going forward. And I'm looking forward to see more of your work going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being with you.